Hello and welcome. My name is Zuhair and I'm the Senior Product Manager at MongoDB. Today, we will do a quick demo of our new integration with AWS CloudFormation and MongoDB Atlas. In case you haven't heard, AWS CloudFormation is an IAC or Infrastructure as Code tool where you can use YAML or JSON to provision and deploy your AWS and MongoDB Atlas resources. Developers are increasingly growing towards IAC best practices, primarily for increased automation, increased version control in their infrastructure. You can check in your CloudFormation templates into GitHub, for example, for improved team collaboration and higher code quality. You can benefit from increased cost savings. So you can be alerted for any over provisioning or waste of cloud resources. CloudFormation helps with improved compliance. So it makes it easier to enforce organizational policies and standards. Together, we will create and deploy a MongoDB Atlas M10 cluster on AWS. M10s are great for development, test, and low traffic applications. We will assume that you have already created your MongoDB Atlas account and linked your credit card. First, we will create programmatic API keys to use with CloudFormation. Second, we will activate a third-party extension for MongoDB Atlas resources on the CloudFormation public registry. Third, we will create a simple CloudFormation template together. This is the JSON file, which specifies the CloudFormation, the MongoDB Atlas resources that will be deployed. Fourth, we will create a CloudFormation stack, which is the vehicle that is being used to deploy our CloudFormation template in AWS. And then once the MongoDB Atlas clusters have been created, last but not least, we will show you how to get your connection string. With your connection string, you can then use that to connect your app with MongoDB Atlas and hopefully build your next great app together with MongoDB Atlas and AWS. If all that sounds great, let's get started. All right, first up, we will walk you through how to create your programmatic API keys with MongoDB Atlas. So if you're looking at my screen, you should have already created your MongoDB Atlas account and linked your credit card if you're looking to deploy any paid MongoDB Atlas clusters. API access keys are important for you to connect to CloudFormation, which is the permissions and authorization you'll need to tell CloudFormation which MongoDB Atlas account to connect and eventually deploy its resources. So you're going to go into Access Manager on the left-hand side and then click on API keys. And then on the right-hand corner, you're going to see this box for Create API Key. I'm going to put a helpful description here. So I'll call this CFN demo, CloudFormation demo. And you can see organizational permissions on the right-hand side. For this demo, we're going to give ourselves organizational owner permissions on these API keys. Okay, so this is very important. These keys will only be shown once, so make sure to copy them. I am going to create a blank file here and just make sure that we paste them in. Great. And you want to make sure to give yourself API access list so that you can make sure to add your particular IP address. And if it's helpful, if you don't know your IP address, you can just click this button, which we'll do, use current IP address. This way we can access these keys once they're deployed. Just as a quick tip, while you're in Access Manager, we added our IP address to this access list, which is great. But since we're deploying through CloudFormation, so that server is going to be in AWS's cloud and a place likely different than where you are, you are going to probably need to add that IP address as well. I believe you can get some of those details from AWS directly. For simplicity, though, I'm just going to open our API access keys up to the world. Again, I would use caution while doing this. because anyone can access your MongoDB Atlas environment. So this is just for demo purposes. Please do not use this in production. Okay, that went through, and I'm just going to do one more to get the other half of the CIDR range. So 128.0.0.0/1. Perfect. Okay, so we have our IP address as well as the rest of the IP addresses open to the whole world. Thanks. Okay, next up, we will activate our CloudFormation third-party extensions. So within the AWS Management Console, simply just go to CloudFormation. Be mindful that CloudFormation is region-specific. For this demo purposes, we will be using the AWS Frankfurt or EU Central 1 region. On the left-hand side, you want to go towards public extensions. Under Publisher, you can click on Third Party. And I'm just going to Control F, MongoDB. And there's two resources that we will need for this demo. We're going to need MongoDB Atlas Cluster and MongoDB Atlas Project. So we will be activating both of them. Cluster, you can see the code here as need the MongoDB Atlas CloudFormation schema. For this resource, you're going to click Activate, and it's going to ask you for a specific ARN, or AWS resource number, which is the IAM execution rule used to activate this third-party resource. So if you don't have one already, let's just briefly walk through that. Again, I'm going to go in towards AWS, and I'm going to go in towards IAM, or Identity and Access Management. And on our GitHub repo, we have sample IAM roles, but just in case if you don't have one, we can show you what one looks like. We can create one together as well. So you're going to create a role with a trust relationship. You want to make sure that gives CloudFormation STS, or Simple Token Service, access to assume role. For simplicity purposes, we have a wildcard here for any AWS resource. And then for permissions, you just want to make sure that you have Secret Manager full access. Those are the only two you need to deploy MongoDB Atlas Cluster and Project. Just assume role on the trust relationships, on the permissions, Secrets Manager. So once you have your role, you want to copy that ARN number up here, and we're going to paste that in our execution role ARN box and click Activate Extension. And just like that, we've activated Cluster. And to confirm, you can go to Activated Extensions, Third Party, and you should see Cluster. Now I'm going to do the same thing for Project resource. Go to MongoDB, and let's go down towards Project. And again, Project is the superset where all clusters will live. We're going to activate it, and we're going to paste that same ARN in here. Click Activate Extension. Just like that, we have activated our two resources. Great. All right, next up, we will walk through how to create the actual CloudFormation template using JSON. Just as a pro tip, we have templates available for all our CloudFormation resources that we've deployed with MongoDB Atlas on the CloudFormation public registry. You just want to go to our repo, our official MongoDB repo, MongoDB/MongoDB Atlas-CloudFormation-resources, and you can just click on examples. And since we'll be deploying a cluster resource, you can use the example here, cluster.json. I've already copied this into our VS Code template over here, just to kick things off. And I have in my clipboard our API keys that we made together. Yeah. So I'm just gonna first modify our cluster, our template, by pasting in our API keys. Now these are the same API keys that we made earlier in this demo. Make sure it's going in the right spot. And I'll walk you through this template as well. So there's this actually creates two resources: MongoDB Atlas Project and MongoDB Atlas Cluster. So I just put in the programmatic API keys for project, and I will do the same for cluster. Okay, now we need the organizational ID. If you don't know how to pull that, I'll show you how to do that real quick. Within the MongoDB Atlas UI, just click on this gear icon at the top left-hand corner, and you'll see this organizational ID. You can copy it from there. I've already copied and pasted it into my VS Code. Next, you can see the specifics. Now we have a rich level of documentation on our repo, as well as on the CloudFormation public registry website. But you can see the specifics for this cluster. We are making a 4-node cluster, so it's 3 of the nodes are going to be M10, as mentioned earlier, and 1 node is going to be an analytics node, which is a read-only node, which is great for analytics purposes. So it doesn't take up traffic on your main nodes, which are the production nodes. We will be deploying this in EU Central 1. Also, just want to call out that there is in the template that we've uploaded towards on GitHub. There are outputs already here to get your connection string, and I'll show you what to do with that in a moment. Thanks. All right, we are at the home stretch. So again, we're gonna deploy now that we have our template created, we're now gonna deploy our CloudFormation. We're gonna create and deploy our CloudFormation stack. So let's create a new stack with new resources. Template is ready, upload an existing file. Let's just make sure to save our VS Code example. As you can tell, I've made that mistake before. Make sure the file's correct, and let's go next. Okay, let's give this a name. I'm gonna call this stack13. Let's give it cluster13 and project13. Let's keep all the defaults on this page, keep all the defaults on this page, and let's cross our fingers and let's hope this works. You can get a live stream of our MongoDB Atlas deployment in CloudFormation. I'm going to open up a window which looks at MongoDB Atlas itself, and we can actually see a new project has been created. Actually, go to our activity feed, and we can actually confirm that a new project 1.3, was created. And I can click into that, and it looks like something new is being deployed, which is awesome. I'm just going to go back to our AWS window and hit refresh. And as you can see, you have a stream of process updates, which is awesome. It looks like a project has already been created, and we are in the process of making an Atlas cluster. There are some helpful details here. You already have under Resources tab, you already have your physical ID for both the project and cluster resource. No outputs just yet. I believe the stack has to finish deploying before you get those outputs. Just as a quick reminder, it takes 7 to 10 minutes to deploy a typical MongoDB Atlas cluster, so I sped things up a little bit. Okay, so it looks like our cluster has been created and our stack has been fully deployed. With CloudFormation, you can actually see the outputs that we called out directly in our template, and I'll show you how to access that connection string shortly. But everything looks good. Seeing greens across the board, and you have access to the template itself that we put together for reference. I'm also going to the Atlas UI, and you can see the cluster that we created. It was an AWS Frankfurt region, EU Central 1. We didn't specify a MongoDB version, so that's why 5 was selected. As of February 2023, MongoDB 5 is the current default. And everything looks good. Okay, so just real briefly, the easiest way that I like to connect to connection strings, and then keep in mind, we only created a cluster and a project resource. In order for us to connect to this database, we'll also need a IP access list for the cluster, and we'll need a database user. So let's click on, in the Atlas UI, you can click on the connect button. And just like that, it's going to be asking us to add an IP connection. So let's allow access from anywhere, as we mentioned before, and then let's just make a simple user. Cool. And so we have an IP access list, and we have a database user. Now we can choose any connection method that makes sense for you, just to connect. Let's use MongoDB Compass, which is our MongoDB's GUI. And I already have MongoDB Compass installed. You can see the connection string here. I'm gonna copy this guy and let me pull up. So I just pulled up MongoDB Compass, and you want to make a new connection. Let's just paste that in there, and just remember your database user and password to paste it in there as well. Test and test. Everything else looks good, and let's connect. And we're in. All right, thank you so much. That wraps it up. In summary, today we deployed our very first MongoDB Atlas cluster with our new integration with AWS CloudFormation. To do that, we created a JSON file specifying our MongoDB Atlas resources. We activated our third-party extensions in the CloudFormation public registry. We uploaded that CloudFormation template, that JSON file, into a CloudFormation stack, deployed our resources into AWS EU Central 1 or AWS Frankfurt region. We verified that a MongoDB Atlas project and cluster resources were created via the Atlas UI, and we created a MongoDB Atlas connection string, which we then used to connect to our database with MongoDB Compass, our GUI. Super jam-packed session. Thank you so much for your time in the demo. The last thing I do want to highlight is our MongoDB Atlas CloudFormation resources are 100% free and open source. They're licensed under the Apache 2.0 license. You are only billed for the resources that you're deployed, but the actual tools themselves are free. The GitHub repo that you mentioned is the best place to go in case you're curious to learn more, and you're more than welcome to start contributing today. Thank you.